All right, well, welcome to the Geeks vs. Games. I'm Kolby.
And I'm Phil.
Today we're bringing you a review of Stronghold 2nd Edition, published by Portal Games and Stronghold Games, and designed by Ignacy Trzewiczek. So, in Stronghold 2nd Edition, it's a two-player game that the box says it lasts about 90 minutes. In this game, you have an invader and a defender. The two players play on opposite sides, and the invader is trying to break into the stronghold within 7 turns. If the defender can keep the invader from doing that for 7 turns, the defender wins. If the invader is able to break in, the invader wins. The players will play by choosing a bunch of different actions and spending resources to further their strategy. Go ahead and start with the negatives. The first thing for me, since I bought this game and I had played it through a few times solo to figure out the rules, is the rulebook. This is supposed to be a 2nd edition, and the rulebook was impossible to navigate. Now, Portal has come out and apologized for that. They've put out actually 2 new rulebooks since the game was published, and Rodney Smith from Watch It Played has put out a Watch It Played video, learn to play watching the video. That's very good quality. So Portal Games is doing what they can to get this into the hands of people and to help people to learn how to play, but it was definitely impossible to navigate that rulebook the first time. Second thing is that this is a 2-player game only, so it's not one that you can necessarily play at every game night.
Yeah.
You can't play it with 4 people. There's no even setup for teams like you have in War of the Ring or some other 2-player games.
The third negative, which was big for me, are these tiny, tiny blocks. If you have children or you have a tendency to lose things, I would be very careful when you purchase this game, if you do end up purchasing it, to keep track of these blocks. And even the pieces, although well done for the people inside the defenders, they are still rather small, but comparatively I much prefer the miniatures inside the city. If there was some kind of discs or even larger blocks, it would have been a lot better.
The biggest negative for me probably, and this might improve with experience as we play the game more, is in this game I was the defender and Phil was the invader. But as the defender, you have to stop a certain amount of invader units from being on each wall section. And that means that sometimes this game can get a little bit mathy. You'll sit there and look at the worst case scenarios at a couple of different wall sections where you'll be fighting. For instance, in our last round here, there's combat at 5 different wall sections. So that meant that I had to run through every single wall section as the defender to determine if he could break through and if there was anything I could do to prevent him from breaking through.
But that might be a positive thing for some people, because I know personally that I have plenty of friends that don't really enjoy dice. They don't like the random aspect. And the fact that they can add up their numbers and see where they are on the field and calculate exactly what it's going to take to win in those certain areas, some people may see that as a positive. But personally, it can get a little overwhelming, especially for new players if you were only to play one-on-one, because there's no one there to help you. There's no team aspect. This is extremely duel-based.
Yeah, and I actually have no problem with the mathiness. I just think it's something that people should be aware of
definitely.
Going into this game. That this is in some ways it feels kind of dry. The math part of it feels kind of dry.
Enough about the negatives. We really enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it playing for my first time. So for the positives, it's extremely thematic. Now, I'm not saying, you see the models come out or anything like that, but the actions you can choose are extremely thematic. So as the defender, watching as I was attacking, all the troops he was bringing out and the things he was doing to stop me, like traps and archers and building more soldiers and bringing them back, because he had a hospital in here and he could only bring back a certain amount of troops. It's extremely thematic. It feels like he's just being overwhelmed the entire time. And as the attacker, I felt like I had just so many troops I was throwing at the walls, and they're supposed to be orcs and goblins and trolls, and they swarm the walls, and I thought that was a very good job. Especially the layout of the board. It made it very, very interesting, especially planning out where I'd put my catapults and my ballistas and all that stuff. It was very good. I really enjoyed that aspect.
Along with that, one of the biggest positive I have about this game is that it offers a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
Another Ignacy Trzewiczek game, Robinson Crusoe, I feel like is very similar. In that game, you can do a myriad of different actions, and it's the same thing here. The invader has a lot of freedom. The defender has a lot of freedom. And so on our negative side, we talk about the math and how this game is fairly complicated. The good aspect of that is because there are so many different strategies, you can really do whatever you want. And that allows you to have those thematic moments where you feel like you're playing out a movie. You know,
Yeah.
the Siege of Helm's Deep. That thematic idea too. I think the game board art and the tokens and everything, they're not only functional, but I think they're very beautiful, especially the board.
Yeah.
I think it really conveys the theme and does a good job of also signaling the function of the board. All the units can be placed in spots, and those spots are clearly marked on the board. So that helps with the complexity of this game. It helps new players.
Biggest things for me as the attacker I noticed were these bigger dials here. These represent hero tokens that are on the field. And honestly, they make this game to the point where it's an even fight on both sides. If they had chosen not to include these pieces, it probably would have been a one-way route. It just wouldn't have been balanced.
Mm-hmm.
These heroes add an aspect of these order tokens that they can use for free that really bring a sense of desperation as the defender, that you